Discord. Haha. Nope. Yep. Now we're on the right screen, and we're live too.
Oh, great.
You know exactly what I said? Hey, I don't want to be showing off like all my 1,000 tabs. That's where it started.
Happened immediately. Happened immediately.
Happened immediately.
That's what you get. You shouldn't have jinxed yourself.
I deserve it.
Well, Kyle, it finally happened. We got a good modern Transformers film. Not just pieces of it where the first 5 minutes are great and the rest is the Iron Giant. Not Rise of the Beasts, but a decent, I'd say good, Transformers movie.
You know, I was expecting a bad movie. I almost kind of needed a bad movie.
I've sunk so many years into this.
I have spent so much time expecting movies to suck at this point, especially Transformers ones. That's
It
like
was
you almost
weird.
kind of we almost just need like that next injection of all right, here's that next thing that's gonna piss me off.
No, it was super weird um, to see that the movie was good. Like I'm glad that I walked out of it feeling great, and I'm really excited for where it goes from here. I do think that you're still showing your share live stream screen.
No, it should be on Discord now.
Okay.
What is it?
I'd say
It still is. Why the hell? You're supposed to be focusing on Discord. I was expecting a bad movie. I almost kind of needed a bad movie.
I've
What? Hank, you still there, bud? Something's going on. Everything crashed. Nope. This ain't working. Why is it not working now? Hmm.
um, the internet went poo poo.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what was going on there.
Yeah, that was weird. Anyway, well, now I'm back. I jinxed this. I was trying to discuss about the quality of the live stream, and then
There we go. I have now fixed everything.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I think the. Oh yeah, I see it. You're right. It's like the tunnel. Anyway, so I felt vindicated, and the inside joke, that we had going into Rise of the Beast was, and I'm gonna say this here, you know it, but it's funny because it gives context. As you know, Kyle and I went to see Rise of the Beast together. Bree, my wife, went, and we were supposed to have another friend go with us, but he unfortunately couldn't make it. So, as the lights dimmed, I said aloud to the theater, "Please don't disappoint me. I can't do it a seventh time." And it kind of became like an inside joke with us about the movies because, I remember being young and excited for '07, and then like from that point on, with 3 I guess being the exception because I felt really good about 3, but from that point on it was like just a slow descent into every time I'd leave a Transformers movie I felt a little bit disappointed. Bumblebee again I think was a high point, mostly in part, I'd say mostly due to the opening scene. But I leaned over before the movie started, and I said to Kyle, like, should I do it? I'm not going to say it. Like, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to jinx it. Because the joke was going to be that I'd say, please don't disappoint me. I can't do it an 8th time. But I thought, I'm not going to this time. So I feel vindicated in that I did leave the theater not disappointed. And this is what I was about to tell you in the pre-show, but I wanted your live reaction because I thought it'd be funnier. I almost went and saw it again yesterday. Like we were out and about, and we were actually at Waffle House, and we were eating, and I was like, man, I would go see it again. I was like, do you want to go see it again? And Bree was like, do you want to? I almost did. I literally almost did, but I decided not to. I didn't want to buy movie tickets again. So I was like, I'll just wait. Maybe I'll go see it again some other time before it leaves theaters. But I definitely want it on Blu-ray. So yeah, I did legitimately. Like it wasn't just like a platitude. I almost went again and saw it yesterday for the second time, but talked myself out of it. But yeah, I off the rip. I mean, I have a list, and you know this, but I'm very happy with the movie. I have a couple negative points, which I would more classify as nitpicks, really, just as a fan. I think the issues I have with the movie are quite minor, no pun intended, and they're really nitpicks. There's a couple. I think there's one or two neutral bullet points that don't really go positive or negative. It's just more observations. And then I've got a bunch of positive things that I'd like to talk about. So
For sure. Before we get started in that, let's say hello to Rex Films. Thanks for showing up, bro. TF1 was so freaking good. JWP Walker Prime, 3 thumbs up. CT 1509. I saw TF1 Saturday with my friend, and the movie was so damn good. It seems like that's the reoccurring theme here.
Oh yeah.
Megatron on Dark Energon. I like that one. Megatron on Dark Energon parentheses crack. I had my opinions in the studio cooking this movie for years. Or I had my minions in the studio cooking this movie for years. Well, good on you. Junior Betancourt, how's it going? We got D. Rice Raid fanfic saying greetings from Trinidad and Tobago.
Hey,
and greetings from the States. Gotta love America. Yeah, and alright, yeah, that's where we're at.
Cool. Well, I guess do you want to set the stage for there were 4 of us that saw the movie this time.
Yes.
And we all met up at the theater, and there were, including us, a total of 9 people.
You were really excited too, because we were the first 4 in the theater, and he was insistent that if we were the only 4, he was going to be so excited, he was going to lose his mind.
I was like, yeah, if we're the only people in this theater, I'm excited because it's a private movie. But also, I was like, that concerns me for the box office. Because I would hope that the theaters... I remember the theater being very full when we saw Rise of the Beast. But there were only 9 of us. It was the 4 of us, and then there was a family of 4, the row behind us, and then like 15 minutes in, another just random dude came in and sat at the end of our row. So that was it. Like, that's the only people who were in the theater. And, I mean... So we didn't get the experience of people like, I keep hearing that when the theaters are full that people will cheer and applaud, and like there's notable audible reactions from the crowd, and basically I was the only one making noise.
You were?
I did make some noise from time to time. I am ashamed to say that I unfortunately have developed the movie talker life debt, basically.
Well, there was you, and then there was some kid behind us who was like trying to explain it to, I guess, their parent.
Yeah. I heard something about Mario and Luigi, how the red guy is like Mario and the Bumblebee is like Luigi. And I remember being like, these kids, can I swear? Is that okay?
You can.
These kids have no fucking clue what they're talking about. It's like, get them out of here. This is for fans only.
This is for fans only. That's why they explained everything about the Transformers in this lore.
Now Mario, Luigi. I only heard bits and pieces of it. I think it's funnier that they were explaining it like to their mom in terms of Mario and Luigi. But yeah, that was our theater experience. It was very quiet, except for me, and it was not like we specifically seek out this theater because it's one of the nicer ones. So like we don't see movies very often. So it's in a good central location where like we can meet up with Kyle. It's pretty far from here, but it's worth it because our theater is bad. But yeah, I guess we could get right into it. I mean, I've summarized my thoughts, but what's your summary? After 3 days out, 2 days out, whatever, how are you feeling about it now that you've had time to digest it?
Honestly, I'm like you, where I want to watch it again, and that's unusual for me because movie theaters. Sorry, there's paint on my keyboard here. It's distracting me.
Scrape it off.
I'm trying. It's not coming off. No, movie theaters just disgust me. I get so grossed out there all the time, and I fall asleep in movies all the time.
He does. It's really bad.
But it's yeah. If I'm sitting here like, yeah, I'd go back to see it again in a theater, then it's got to be good, right? There's small nitpick things. They're probably not the same things as yours, because mine are kind of like unusual things.
Oh, I'm interested to know because
Yeah.
I think it's important for the audience. We've not discussed. I mean, we had like a very basic debrief like after the movie, but then we went out and had dinner and drinks, and then we talked about everything else. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about
Yeah,
the
spent
movie.
more time talking about first alcoholic beverages than
Yeah, yeah.
talking about the movie.
So, I think it's important because it'll come up later. Again, my wife Bree went with us, and she thought that Michael Bay invented Transformers. So
Oh,
she was exposed to them before we began dating, but I have definitely converted her into a semi-casual fan of the franchise. And then my friend Ethan was with us. Ethan doesn't know much about Transformers at all, but he wanted to see the movie because I had told him a little bit about the premise, and so he came in as a completely
as a complete
new.
novice.
Yeah, so I think, and we spent a lot of time talking on the hour ride back here with Ethan because he had questions and he had observations, and then Bree and I've talked about it too. So I've got some perspectives from kind of like a semi-casual, a woman who lives with me, a huge nerd who has all kinds of Transformers stuff and is constantly telling her about Transformers things, and then also the perspective of Ethan who doesn't know much at all. So I'll factor those in as it becomes appropriate, but I wanted to kind of set the stage for what our group looked like, because I think that knowing their perspective helped me see the movie for what it actually is versus what I went into hoping and expecting it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all good news, but without further ado, how much longer can I string this thing out?
All right, let's just get into it.
Okay, and to drive up your engagement, because I'm a good friend like that, be sure to let us know in the chat how you felt about the movie. And as we make points, feel free to chime in what you thought about stuff. Keep that engagement going. It's good for Kyle.
Feel free to tell me you absolutely disagree with our opinion whatsoever. You can even insult me personally. I won't take it personal.
I want you to insult him personally.
I won't take it personal.
So I figured we could start out, and I have it classified as negatives, but I'm just going to call it nitpicks because it really isn't anything crazy. And the first one, I feel like this is pretty common. It could have been longer. The movie was only 90 minutes. I feel like, and it's not like the selfish thing of like, oh, I just wanted more. I really do feel like the movie could have benefited from 15 to 25 minutes of extra runtime. Because and again, spoilers, by the way, because I don't think I can talk about any of this without spoiling things.
No.
I'm going to do my best to not give as much away as possible, but just you've been warned, like we're going to mention things about the movie. So if you're wanting to go into it blind, I'm so sorry, but I can't really formulate my thoughts without referencing specific parts of the film. Specifically, I would have liked to see more of D16 and his life before the adventure, of the movie, but it doesn't necessarily have to be just him and Orion. It could have just been him, because later on in the movie, there's like his whole worldview gets upended, and I feel like the impact would have been a whole lot greater. And this actually came from Bree directly, and I agreed with this statement. It's like that payoff it was good. It's not bad, but it was a good payoff. I think it would have been better if we got to spend a little bit more time with him as like the yes man, like I've just accepted my station. This is how life is, and I'm happy. I'm not going to question things. I'm just, I'm vibing. I'm living my life. We hear about it a lot. He says to Orion often, he's like, hey, I was staying on task. I was staying on protocol. I was doing me, and everything was fine. And as soon as you started trying to get adventurous, the shit hit the fan. And like I get it, I know you can't show everything. I just do believe wholeheartedly that we could have benefited from a little bit more time with D16.
Fully agree.
Seeing how he lived his life before they went on their adventure, because you get thrown in almost immediately. Like the whole front bit of the movie, I mean, it's like let's go. Like there's no waiting. You are in it and you're going from the jump.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you. Especially like having some more time just for like D16, because like you, I explained everything to my brother, and he sat there and he was sitting there and going, he's like, so this movie sucks, as I'm explaining it, because for him it's just like all of a sudden, like trying to explain it without seeing it, it sounds like Megatron just jumps from like D16 to Megatron like that.
Yeah, which is so ironic, and I want to say because like I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but since we're on topic now, to me, and I'm a Decepticon guy. Like I empathize with the Decepticons. I love the IDW stuff with Megatron and Megatron Origins, him becoming an Autobot. I love all that. But like I empathized more with Megatron's story in this movie than I did with Orion's. And that's not to say that Orion's story was bad, but Megatron's discovery of everything that makes him switch into who he becomes, I just empathize with that a lot more. Like there was a moment where I did hold my tongue. I was gonna say it out loud, but you know the scene where I'm talking about, where they're looking over and he's like standing there wide-eyed, like they're looking and they're observing, what Alpha Trion had told them, but now they're seeing it with their own eyes, the betrayal, and Megatron's just like wide-eyed, jaw slack, just staring. His whole world has come to a screeching halt, and I was like, "Yep, that relatable. Yep, I understand. I feel that. Like it's insane." So,
well, I think it's supposed to be that moment and the moment where he ends up shooting Orion. They're supposed to be like the real, like, oh, that's the one. Those are the moments that are supposed to hit you hard.
Yeah, and you feel it. That's another a good compliment for this movie. We're just gonna jump around.
That's gonna happen.
You feel everything. Like there were moments where they like Orion would slap like D16 on the shoulder, and they'd look at each other and they'd smile at each other, and I felt like the warm and fuzzies. And like I know that they're mortal enemies. Like I went into this movie understanding how it was gonna end, and I'm still a biased audience member feeling their connection and their warmth, and like it's a very emotional movie. I think the comparisons to Spider-Verse, that those two movies are pretty fair, because they're animation, but they're animated beautifully, and they're also they're aimed at kids. There's kids stuff in it. There's comedy and there's goofy stuff. But there's also some pretty heavy character themes and some pretty adult moments too, where you're like, oh, like I feel this happening to these characters. And so the comparisons that people are saying now, like this is a lot like Spider-Verse, I get it. I understand what they're talking about. So I do all that to say, like I feel like it would have been like icing on the cake if we had spent a little bit more time with D16 ahead of time, so that all that paid off. Because just like to your point, your brother didn't see it, and it seems like it just kind of happens like that when it really doesn't, and we know that. But it gets really difficult to
explain it, but also like just for like a casual fan too, they're just like a, not even like a casual, I'll say like a not a regular Transformers viewer.
Yeah.
They're gonna sit there and they're not gonna care too much anyhow, and they're gonna see it as that was just kind of a jump.
Right. I will say, I think from Ethan's perspective, he followed. I think he did say the same thing, that he liked Megatron's story a little bit more than he liked Orion's. That he thought that maybe Orion might have been a little impulsive and stuff just kind of happened to him. And I'm hoping I'm not taking him out of context there, but I think importantly the sentiment was that he found D16's story more relatable than Orion's, which I think is cool, because it's about time that we focus on Decepticons as characters and not just like the hand-wringing villains.
Well, I do think actually, like, Orion was like obviously supposed to be the main character, right? Because he traditionally is, but this was really D16's story. This was his movie.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. You hit the nail right on the head. It is very much about D16 becoming Megatron and why he does that.
Hmm.
And Orion is there, and he does have his own story, but I think it's time that Megatron's story does get front and center a little bit because we've seen so much of Optimus, and that's not a bad thing. But I think the interesting exploration of who Megatron is and why he is who he is in relation to Optimus is the whole point of this story being so captivating. So I agree with you 100%.
Hmm.
The other complaint I had is, and this is a nitpick, this is me, okay? A lot of the background characters, because there's like all the, and you'd have to go back and watch it to pick everybody out. I was sitting there, this is probably where you heard me. This is probably where you heard me, because I'm like leaning over, I'm like, there's Wheeljack. Like, there's Sunstreaker. You know, as if I'm playing Where's Waldo with all the Transformers characters. But I was just so excited to see them. All the background characters, all the minors really, their voices to me sounded incredibly generic. Like Ironhide speaks a little bit,
I think he says one line. Yeah.
Yeah, and he just doesn't. To me, it just didn't sound like Ironhide, which is fine because we'll talk about it later. But the voice acting, when they get their T-Cog and when they evolve into like the full Transformer, their powers develop, their armor changes, and specifically Orion and D16 as they evolve into Optimus and Megatron, their voice changes throughout the film. So I think that there's a clear path forward to where in the sequel, fingers crossed we get the sequel, that the beloved characters have a little bit more iconic voices. But like I heard Wheeljack talk once, and it didn't sound like Wheeljack to me. I heard Ironhide, like I said. I'm trying to think. RC, I think was passable, so that's not fair to say for all of them. I think RC sounded pretty good. Starscream was great, but again, he's got a T-Cog.
Yeah.
I did personally have a little bit of beef with how Soundwave.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
I
knew it.
He's got to have the vocoder stronger, guys. Like,
I know.
The whole charm.
It's like they decided, like, should we go the vocoder route or should we take a play from Netflix's book?
Yeah.
Netflix's book.
It was just John Bailey doing the deep Dr. Claw voice, which is fine because that's the basis for Soundwave. But when we know that he can speak, John Bailey can do that voice like he did in Bumblebee, and he he can do it with the vocoder and you can still understand him. Why are we not vocoding Soundwave? I just, that's to me, it's a staple of the character. And another staple, I'm not really bummed out about this, is like the Minions weren't in there. Like there were no cassettes, which is fine because I think, again, sequel, they might go into that. But, it was a little weird seeing Soundwave without, like he still gets his line, like when they're going into the big battle, he still says, eject, and then all the troops deploy. But it's not the same. But that's just me, because I'm a big Soundwave fan. So I wasn't dissatisfied, but I think it could have been better if they just like upped the vocoder a little bit. But I am curious what you thought about Shockwave's voice.
Oh, I was all for it. I'm not necessarily someone who says he has to be like emotionless because he was that way in this show or this show. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
But I just like the fact that his voice didn't annoy me like the Netflix one did. That's all I wanted, just not to annoy me.
For real. I was expecting something similar to John Bailey's performance. I know it's not John Bailey, but I was expecting something similar to John Bailey's performance in Bumblebee again. It was not. It skewed more towards Transformers Prime, like David Sobolov's Shockwave. Mm-hmm. But it was not as monotone and, mundane. He had funny lines. He had inflection, which, again, these characters are very much in their infancy in this universe. It's not fair to hold them to the standard of other... this isn't connected to the Michael Bay movies. This isn't connected to Bumblebee. No matter what Lorenzo Di Bonaventura says... Just because it is a Transformers movie, it's not connected to the other ones in any way. It's its own thing. It may reference other media, but it's not connected. So these are like the baby versions of these new interpretations of the characters, and I think that we have a lot of groundwork that can be done moving forward. So it's not necessarily fair. Again, that's why I call it a nitpick and not a negative.
Yeah.
Because it'd be different if it was like the Decepticon movie and this is what was happening. But I thought Steve Buscemi as Starscream was a killer choice. It was a little jarring at first, but then as it progressed, I was like, okay, I hear it now. I hear Starscream, and it's Steve Buscemi.
Yeah. I have one voice nitpick thing though.
Yeah.
And mine is it has to do with Megatron really. He was great voice. He was a great voice for D16. But it's like for Megatron, whenever he started to like go like trying to go deeper with his voice, all I could still hear was the high pitched voice. I'm like, that's just not Megatron.
Yeah, wasn't there for you.
It wasn't there.
It's so funny because I know you haven't seen the Spider-Verse movies, but Brian Tyree Henry voices Uncle Aaron in the Spider-Verse movies, and that guy, he can go so deep. Like, he can take it super deep. And it's like he added a rumble, but I understand. I don't think, I could see how it wouldn't be enough. For me, it was more in how he spoke, not so much like his voice specifically, how it sounded. Like, you can hear when he switches from just like, I'm okay, plucky, I'm living my life, to I'm taking control now and my way or the highway. Like, you can hear that switch in his voice, and it's how he has the cadence and like a gravitas to his voice. But yeah, I could see that. It is a pretty big departure. I was here for it, but it is a pretty big departure from what we're used to. Definitely not close to Frank Welker. Definitely not close to Fred Tatasciore with the Cybertron games. Not even really close to Corey Burton in animated, which is a higher pitched. He's not as raspy as G1 Megatron was. Not like David Kay. It is a brand new interpretation of Megatron. So you'll have to be prepared for that if you're going in with like an expectation of here's how he's going to sound.
Yeah.
I mean the trailers. That's it. Like it's that, but he evolves a little bit. So.
Exactly. It's not like it was like a huge thing. Like, oh man, this ruins it. It was just one of those things where it's like, I feel like it should have had more bass. It needs to be more sinister.
Well, I hope that moving forward that he might play with it a little bit more, because I've seen some interviews and he seems like he genuinely thought that the role was fun. So maybe between now and then he could flesh it out a little bit. I think he's a very talented voice actor. I have every bit of confidence that he will be able to deliver a good Megatron, but yeah, it definitely is a little bit further outside the realm of what I was expecting. And but to say all that, I guess I'll piggyback here into saying, like, Chris Hemsworth as Orion and then subsequently Optimus blew my expectations out of the water. At first I was weirded out, in the trailer. I was like, that's obviously Thor.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I can't unhear him because we're just so used to his voice as other characters. But it did not take me but maybe 15 or 20 minutes into the film to get all in and understand, like that's Orion. And then when he evolves into Optimus again, Chris does something amazing with his voice where he finds his footing. It's very intentional. It's not like Chris Hemsworth just accidentally was like, okay, I figured this out mid-movie. He plays it like unsure. And then you'll know what I'm talking about. It's the speech when he's rallying all the miners, right? Like, he starts out a little shaky and he's not quite sure about everything that he's saying. And then he really like finds his footing and you hear him become Optimus Prime. Like, the gravitas and the weight and the inflections, like, he just slips into it almost accidentally. And I think it was all by design. I think Chris did it on purpose. And it was really, really awesome to hear, especially because one of my favorite two-parters from Prime is the Orion, or three-parter, is the Orion Pax 3 episodes where Peter plays Orion with a different, like, almost childlike quality to his voice. And I was like, that's so cool, because just like the difference in inflection, this is a different person. Like, yeah, he's the same guy, but it's a different personality. And to hear Chris Hemsworth do the opposite, where he becomes and fulfills that role, I was like, wow, there's so much heavy lifting with the voice cast. And I think when everybody was upset early on at the casting, I think this is why, is because the voice directors knew that these guys could deliver this evolution throughout the runtime of the film. And I'm blown away with Optimus and Megatron's performance. Little to be desired on the rest of them, which is okay. But so
Yeah, no, that was it for me on voice wise.
your only any more? That's it for me in terms of like nitpicks or criticism. Is there anything else you have in terms?
Like criticism entirely.
Yeah, I mean, I had this laid out and now I've ruined it. So
I guess the only other really nitpick criticism I had was the Alita character. She just drove me nuts the whole time. Like, she's always sitting there and talking about how she's smarter, she's better, you're dumb, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that just got annoying. That got annoying after the first time, and then it kept doing it. We kept doing it over and over and over again. And I'm like, that's like, once was enough.
I'm going to make a joke. We got a little brawl. We got a little brawl going on over here.
But it's just like, you could tell me once, fine. You don't need to tell me 6 times.
That kind of segues into my neutral point. Do you have anything else that's negative?
No.
So
that actually was it.
That's it?
Yeah.
My neutral point is, as a fan, and I have a feeling that this was you too, I felt like there was too much repetition. There was a lot of, like, to your point with Alita thing over and over again. And there was a lot of repetition where it was like call and response. So, like, I'm going to give the example. Alpha Trion is like, Sentinel Prime stole your TCOGs before you were brought online. And then Alita's like, Sentinel Prime stole our TCOGs before we were born? And it's like, yeah, he just said that. I get it. But I'm a fan. So, like, when I hear Sentinel Prime stole my TCOG, I'm like, got it. Let's move on. Bree and Ethan needed that to be repeated because they didn't understand how big a deal that was. All they heard was jargon. And then Alita's reaction and, like, repeating that back to Alpha Trion, they were like, oh, that's when we realized this is a big deal. Like, this is huge for them. It's not just him being like, hey, I stole, like, this was stolen from you. And they're like, oh, shucks. Like, so for the fans, I think the repetition was a little grating. And I think if you go into it as immersed in this franchise and, frankly, way too knowledgeable, as I am, and maybe you are, I think that there's room for you to get a little put off by how much time is spent explaining things. But for folks who aren't as familiar with the franchise, like Bree's seen Prime, like, she knows how big a deal a TCOG is, right? Mm-hmm. But for her, it was also like, this, for this world, this needs to be, she's like, to me, that was her selling it, like, how important this was to them and how their whole being, their whole reason for who they are is, like, ripped away. And I just didn't have that. I didn't have that context because I was like, yeah, TCOG is a big deal. And if you don't have it, that's bad. And I was good to go. But I'm not the median viewer for this type of thing. So,
exactly.
It stuck out to me as well. There was a lot of repetition. And there was one point where I remember being like, oh no. Like, they're repeating things a lot. And I sure hope that the rest of the movie doesn't go like this. And to its credit, it doesn't. There's a couple times where it really jumped out at me. And I was like, oh, I feel like we're just rinsing and repeating. But it only happens it's concentrated. I think maybe with the Alita thing, it's more spread out, though.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, it was a character thing that kind of annoyed me after the first time anyhow. I was like, that's rude. And then she kept saying it, and then she would say it again, and I'm like, okay, just gonna keep doing this. Like, the bad Acetron thing, it was okay, like, twice, and then it went, like, 6 times. Yeah. It's kind of similar to that. That one just kind of made me cringe a little bit.
Yeah.
And the Alita one...
last couple.
And then the Alita one just was getting on my nerves, and I'm like, God dang. I have a big thing about repetition though. Like repeating myself or hearing things repeated to me starts to get on my nerves real quick. It's a pet peeve of mine.
I think the problem is they just couldn't show as much as they needed to tell, which sucks because like this story inherently has, you can't just cover all of it because like IDW's been working on this type of stuff for 3 or 4 years. The development of the Cybertron caste system and the development of what life is like before the war, and you have to cram all that into 90 minutes, and so some stuff is going to suffer, and that's part of it, is because they're trying to set Alita up as the, you know, the rigid, stern support system that Orion and eventually Optimus Prime has as his second in command, I suppose, is the ranking that I understood, is it's his second in command. And so they had to have her tell the audience by telling Orion, like, hey, you make dumb decisions, and I'm going to tell you that. And it happens over and over and over again. And then in the end, there's the payoff where he's like, you know, I need you to keep me in check because I am capable of being wrong. And I want somebody on my side who will tell me, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. But it was a little grating. You know, she's hitting people a lot. And it's played for laughs. It's played for laughs that she, like, just keeps beating the shit out of people. But, you know, I think Scarlett Johansson did a really good job. I almost didn't even recognize, you know how normally, like, you'll hear an actor and you're like, I just hear the actor. It was very easy for her to blend in to the Alita role. I think that was another good casting. But yeah, I see your point. And that, again, for me, it bothered me. But I call it a neutral because the other two folks who apparently needed the repetition said that it made the movie clearer to them. So.
I mean, there was repetition that was good, and then there was just some where it was like, this is excessive.
Yeah, I actually repressed the thought about the final few Badassatron lines because he does say it too many.
Yeah.
And I completely like pushed that out of my brain until you said that. And yeah, those last couple, I was like, huh, okay.
It's like, all right.
I get it.
I get it. It was kind of funny the first couple times. Now we're pushing into this is too much.
Since we're here, I do want to say that I was a little worried about Bumblebee being the comedic relief and being annoying, and it seems like we agree that he could be in certain instances. I do think the justification for him being trapped alone way down in like a sub-basement of the planet forever, dude is isolated and lonely, and that explains a lot of why he is how he is, because he's like finally someone to talk to, and especially
when they say it's like there's only 40 sub levels and he's down on 50.
he's sub level 50 with 10 deeper than they even believe that it goes.
And they're like, how long have you been down here? Always.
Yeah, he was like sometime between a long time and forever. So like, I just imagine that he's been going slowly insane in the core of the planet, doing the most meaningless job.
Exactly. He's like, I just look for trash.
Yeah.
Ends up burning his mask too in the process.
Yeah, I caught that. That was funny. He just throws it off. So. Yeah, I liked that. Bumblebee could have very easily been really annoying. There were times where he did get on my nerves a little bit. Not too bad, but kind of bad sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he was fine. I think him being isolated was a helper to his personality because it explains a lot. Some genuinely funny laugh out loud lines from him. I will say that. So he was.
Oh, I've always wanted the working for the government one.
Yeah, that was perfect. I'd say Bumblebee was 80% funny, and there's like 20% in there where I was like, I could go without that.
It's like, I got my dream job. I'm working for the government.
Everyone in the theater thought that was funny. All nine of us.
All 9 of us.
All right, so I guess that means we can move on to the positives, which we've already touched on some. Animation. Animation was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was stylized in a really, really good way. Um, every shot was gorgeous, and I don't know if you noticed this, but something about the metal has like a brushed quality to it, like almost like it was painted. And I know metal can be brushed, I know that, but if you look at some of the stills of the movie, it's obviously CG, but there's bits of it that look like somebody might have hand painted it. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think the style, is amazing. The heads, kind of like Earthrise, or Earthspark, I'm sorry, kind of like Earthspark. There are some angles where the faces are a little uncanny, but for the most part, I thought they were incredibly expressive and very well done, especially the eyes. If you liked, like, if people in the audience liked Transformers Prime, how the pupils would dilate and, like, shift around, that was one of the best complaints that Prime, or not complaints, one of the best compliments that Prime got was that the idle animation, the eyes would shift around as if they were real and they would focus and stuff. The eyes in this movie do that. They're so expressive, and I just think we were all a little put off by some of the early images of like the 30-degree angle on Orion's face. Everybody was like, "Whoa!" But for the most part, I think they worked really, really well. But the animation was stunning. There was so many different set pieces that they went through. The color palette shifted radically throughout the movie. Even the robots themselves, when they're miners, they're like dirty and scratched, and they have like a more matte finish. And then when they get their T-Cogs and they're upgraded, they become really vibrant and shiny. And I just thought that was like a detail that you wouldn't have needed, but they did it because they cared, and it showed that evolution. I thought the animation was stunning. I have no complaints about the animation whatsoever, and I'm really, really pleased with how everything looked. I mean, there's some robot designs in there that I'm like, oh, that's a good looking robot. Like,
Make a toy of that.
I'm buying it. So, what'd you think? Do you like the animation?
No, the animation was pretty good. I'm like you. I was a big fan of the color palette, especially when we got to like the final fight where they really just kind of blew out the color spectrum there.
Yep. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
vibrant. It's so vibrant because you go with like, there's like obviously the sub level of like in the planet, and then there's like that intermediary underneath the surface, but the city, and you've seen them in the trailers. There's like the city because they're below the surface of the planet, right? The surface
Yeah.
is like gone, but they're below the surface, kind of hiding in like the crust beneath the surface of the planet, and there are buildings coming down from the top of this gap that they've carved, and then there's buildings coming up, so it's like stalagmites and stalactites, and so it's just such a unique vision of Cybertron that I've never seen before, and
Exactly.
and that's just like the start of it. And then they get to the surface, and everything is so pretty. And there's like the Cybertronian nature element of it all, and then the cave with all the 13 primes in it. Um, Everything was stunning. Like, and it's it's not like there's one or two areas that this takes place. It feels like a whole planet. The planet feels real and alive and different in certain areas. And I think they did such a great job.
They absolutely did on that.
So, piggybacking on that is the robot designs. We've already talked about that. I think that they looked really great.
They
Again,
pretty much kept kind of like that G1 aesthetic for the most part, aside from a few of them.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
mostly like the mainly like Bumblebee and or not Bumblebee, D16 and Orion. Like there's were the ones that were different, and then as they got like became Optimus and Megatron, that's when they started to be more like the traditional versions.
I thought I thought that all the background guys, for as silly as they sounded, in my opinion, I thought all the background guys were instantly recognizable. Like I said,
Yeah,
I was leaning over. There's Wheeljack. There's Ironhide. Like, you can tell, and Hound is in there. You could tell they're immediately recognizable. I
Yeah.
think and we'll talk about him a little bit more later, but I think Sentinel Prime is my favorite robot design. Spoiler alert: Sentinel Prime is my favorite character in the movie. Um, I love him to death, and I want a toy of him now. Uh,
Well, you gotta wait till next year, I'm afraid.
no, I know. They're screwing me over. Um, but yeah, all the robot designs are amazing. We've already touched on the world building, the planet, but what we didn't touch on really is the caste system. The class hierarchies. It's obviously not as fleshed out as it is in IDW.
No.
It is very boiled down to the point of where it's like there's three tiers basically. There's the miners, which are the bottom rung. They don't transform. Their lot in life is to mine energon. That's all they're there for. Then you have citizens, which we don't really know much about, other than they're just like free people who just like walk around and live their lives, and they do whatever. But they're not beholden to jobs or functions in any capacity that the movie explained at this point in the world building.
It really, it took a minute to even realize there was a caste system for a while.
Yeah. You spend so much time with the miners, you kind of believe that's
that's just how everyone is, and then there's just bots who can transform.
Right, the citizens that can transform are really in the background most of the time, except for like the race, the Iacon 5000.
Yeah.
Then they're featured a little bit more prominently, and that's when the caste system really starts to kick into play, where you start to see, the miners are invited to watch, but it is a big deal that two of them are participating, which they weren't invited to. They broke in. Orion and D16 kind of hijack it and race without without supposing to be there. And then you've got like the upper tier, which is Sentinel and all of his soldiers. So it's a 3-tier system, and everybody loves Sentinel. Right, and the governing body of the primes and the drones, which are not Viacons, but they're called Deathbringers or something. It got mentioned one time, I think, in the film.
I must have missed that.
I knew that they were called Death something because of the toys, but I don't know. I thought for sure they'd call them Viacons because I thought that'd be hilarious because they look like Viacons, but they're not. Same principle. They're just
drones.
Yeah. And then he's got Arachnid, which is his second in command, his enforcer, his eye in the sky. See all, know all.
I thought Arachnid was an interesting choice of character to have Sentinel Prime's second.
I know, but I'd like to touch on her later too, because she really surprised me. Her role in the movie, I remember seeing her in the trailer and being like, "Fuck yeah!" Like Arachnid is in this. Get some love for Transformers Prime. But her position and characterization in the movie was not only impactful to the plot, but also very unique. And I want more out of her, except now she's dead, I think. I don't know. I couldn't remember if they killed her or if they just incapacitated her.
I have no idea.
I'm leaning incapacitation, but I don't remember for sure. So
exactly. I think I'm leaning incapacitated because it seems like there was only one, actual, two momentous murders.
Yeah, that's true. There were, yeah. You're right. We talked about the voice acting already, Prime and Megatron specifically. I cannot give them kudos enough. I know that Megatron was a little bit of a departure for you. I completely understand that. I think given the assignment that they both did a very good job.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing. It was, like I said, he was a good D16. Just the Megatron voice he did just wasn't quite there for me.
And I agree with that. I could totally see where you come from. That I love, Megatron's my second favorite character from the movie. I went in predisposed to love that character and love his story because it's a big deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
Autobot Megatron's huge. You know that. I've already said that. So I kind of went in a little biased, and I was ready to accept no matter what he sounded like. But I do see, if I separate my emotional connection to the character out, I could see your point where it is a little jarring.
Well, that one... I actually expected to probably like Orion more, but then when I started to see I can't wait for the fall off, and I'm like, I think I'm actually more excited for D16 here, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I think he's probably my favorite character, and then I just liked laughing with Sentinel Prime, but
Oh my gosh.
I do
so
think
good.
D16 was my favorite out of it.
Agreed. I can combine these two bullet points. They're actual characters, and you can feel the friendship and then the subsequent split. We've already touched on this a little bit, but these are not just the Michael Bay giant robots that have a couple character traits and that's it. These are actual living, breathing, not breathing probably, living, thinking, feeling characters that you believe exist and have their own hopes and dreams and desires and feelings. And you feel it. There's an emotional element to this movie. It's not just a kid slapstick, comedy. There is, just like Spider-Verse, an emotional investment that you as the audience are supposed to have. And you feel their friendship, and then that makes it incredibly painful for when they do inevitably split and become arch enemies. And I found myself siding with Megatron, just like you, but it's still the pain in their eyes when they realize that there's no going back is palpable and recognizable. And they did such a great job like that, specifically when D16, because at that point he hasn't donned the moniker yet, when D16 drops Orion, that moment tugged at my heartstrings, and I want to mention something specific about it because Bree picked up on something that I did not. That tugged at my heartstrings, and when Optimus then reemerges, and he says, "You betrayed your brethren, you betrayed Cybertron," and then he retracts his mask, and he goes, "And you betrayed me," and his face softens, and his eyes, get sad, and it just is so damn painful to watch him say, we were brothers, and now we're, you felt it. It was so crazy, because these are not real people, but they felt like real people, and that's what I wanted.
You wanted real people.
So,
well, I'm going to say that's compliments to the writing, really, because they did really good on that. Partly on the animation team, but a lot of that's the writing, and it's why I've always been saying for a long time I want an animated Transformers movie, because all these live action ones, they're writing it so the humans are the main focus of the entire movie, and the robots are just the playthings in the background that get you in the theater. So it was nice to finally actually see that the robots, the Transformers, were the actual characters in a Transformers film.
Agreed. The more I think about it, the Michael Bay movies feel a lot more like a Pacific Rim type movie. Pacific Rim is great. The humans are fun. The robot battles are fun. It's a fun watch from start to finish. But Gypsy Danger is not a character. Gypsy Danger looks cool and does some cool shit, but is not a character. And that's kind of how I felt like the Bay movies were. I mean, they were a little bit more fleshed out than, Gypsy. But if you really think about it, that's more in line with what the Bay movies were like. It's exactly what you said. They're in the background. They're there just to do cool shit.
They're there so that way people will go and sit in the theater for a Transformers film. But really, we've made this point before where it's it's really just insert alien race here, and it's just random sci-fi alien movie. That's all they are.
Agreed. I will stand by it until the day I die. Transformers 2007 is less about the Transformers, and it's more about how humanity, the military, and the government react to an alien presence on Earth. That's the crux of the plot, is how those three groups separately react to alien life. And you could swap. It would change some things, but not a lot if you swapped any other alien race in there. You're exactly right. I will stand by it. I still like 2007 Transformers. I still like Dark of the Moon. Revenge of the Fallen's okay. It doesn't change the fact that they're, that's how they are. And it's okay. That's what they are. But this is the opposite.
Exactly. And that's why it's it's nice to finally actually see the Transformers be in the movie of a Transformers film, to do more than just try to convince me to buy toys.
It's nice for me because, the layman for the longest time have only known about the Michael Bay movies. And so like people at work or like Ethan, for example, will say, "Oh, you like Transformers? Like tell me about them." And the first thing I say is it's like, "Well, the Michael Bay movies are just scratching the surface. Like these are actual characters, they have hopes and dreams, blah 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 blah. They become who they are. There's reasons for who they are, All of that has meaning." And for the first time, a movie has captured that sentiment that I have been saying since 2007 when I explained to people that I'm a Transformers fan. And it just feels really nice because I've always known that the franchise is capable of this sort of thing, specifically with Animated and Transformers Prime and IDW. And a little bit of Earthspark. We've seen this. And as a fan, you know it's possible. And it's very difficult when only the Bay movies are like that's all some people have. And so this is like a peek behind like, hey, those are good in their own right and they have a place amongst the franchise. I'm not saying that they don't. They definitely have a place. But here's a peek behind the curtain as to what it can be and what is caused people like me to fall in love with this franchise after all these years and still be a huge fan. Agreed. 100%. It is more than just a movie for me. It is a representation of the best parts of this franchise finally shown on the main stage in terms of like a full-length cinematic event.
For sure.
So big points there. The movie is worth seeing just on that merit. If as a fan or as somebody who wants to know more, just on that merit, it's worth seeing. Let's see. Let's talk about Arachnid and Sentinel Prime. We've touched on them a little bit. Sentinel Prime is my favorite. He's a bastard. And John Hamm did a great job voicing him. And I love that design so much, it makes me want one.
Wasn't that, I think you even said in the theater, too, that, like, when you saw that John Hamm was cast in the movie, you knew he was going to be a bastard.
Yeah. That's unfortunately, John Hamm is kind of typecast in those roles of like a suave guy who's kind of shitty. And he nailed it. Like, he nailed it. It is an amalgamation, Sentinel Prime is, of several different designs of Sentinel. Several different designs, like of Zeta, a little bit, specifically from the Cybertron games. There's a little bit of design influence there. He, character-wise, is a very good blend of Animated Sentinel and Dark of the Moon Sentinel. So he is, like, Transformers 1, like, throw every good bit of Sentinel Prime from the last 14 years into a blender, and what you pour out is Transformers 1 Sentinel Prime. So that's, I mean, I loved it. I think they did such a great job. I didn't expect anything out of him. And he, like, I mean, that robot swooned. He made me swoon. That's what happened. He wooed me. I'm all in. I'm a Sentinel fan. Love it. Did you like him? Did you know he's gonna be a dickbag?
I honestly didn't know what to think about Sentinel Prime. I thought he was just gonna be kind of like just some, like the way it was starting out at first. I kind of didn't picture a dickbag. I pictured just someone who's gonna be like, oh yeah, he's the Prime, but he's also really not, he's gonna be like a spineless coward. I guess that's what I figured. I figured everyone's gonna say like, oh yeah, he's been going up to the surface, and really all he does is like hide in his office,
no,
or something, and then comes out, plays the debonair, suave hero. But really, all he's doing is he's just too afraid.
I didn't expect a lot of the worst things he does, for sure.
Yeah, as soon as it started showing like what he actually was doing, it's like it tracks, but I wasn't expecting it. So you caught me off guard there, Transformers 1. You got me good.
You done got me. So yeah, I love that. And let me touch on this now because we're talking about Sentinel. I'm going to call back to something I mentioned earlier. Because Sentinel turns out to be he killed all the 13. He's made a deal with the Quintessons in exchange for him being the ruling force over Cybertron. He's giving the Quintessons Energon, which is why the miners exist in the first place, which is why their T-Cogs have been taken out. Like, he is the cause for every bad thing on Cybertron, and he not only is lying about it, but orchestrated the whole thing so that he could benefit. So he's a piece of shit, and we love him for it. But Megatron, the reason he or D16 motivates to become Megatron is he's like, well, this guy's got to die. Like, he ruined my whole life. Everything that I've known has been spoon-fed to me by a guy who made it all up. And so his vendetta is, I got to kill Sentinel because he deserves it. Understandable. Like, I get it. Mm-hmm. So then that scene when he's going to kill Sentinel, D16 is. Orion steps, it happens so fast, I didn't expect it. Orion steps in, he says, stop. Steps in front of Sentinel, takes a hit to the shoulder, and is like dying.
It blows him apart.
And that happens in 3 seconds. It, like, immediately. And I was like, oh! Like, good Lord. And so I was talking about that scene where, D16 decides to drop Orion. He's like, I'm done saving you. And Bree made such a great point, and I totally missed it. So I'm going to bring it up here because we're talking about Sentinel. The reason that Megatron switches to Megatron from D16, what forges him and solidifies him as the leader of the Decepticons, and you see it happen, he realizes that Orion chose to save Sentinel instead of backing up his friend by letting D16 kill Sentinel. It's the wrong thing to do, right? Like, Orion fundamentally believes that you shouldn't kill somebody to make, like, you can't, he's like, you can't start off this next chapter of Cybertron with a murder. Which, fair, So, like, they have just opposing ideals of how to deal with this, but Megatron emotionally lets go D16. I get them mixed up. D16 emotionally lets go of Orion before he physically lets go of him because he realizes you chose Sentinel over me. For better or for worse, understandable reasons or not, whoever you agree with, Orion did choose Sentinel over D16, and I think that moment is so powerful because that's when he realizes, I'm through. Like, you're going to be in my way from now on, so I'm going to let you go, and you can die in the core.
We got some comments here even saying Sentinel's death was my favorite scene.
Him getting ripped in half?
It was great!
Like he was a victim of the Spamtopia, from Smiling Friends. It was really good. I will tell you, as soon as he was like, guess what, fools? I have Megatronus' T-Cog. I was like, oh, that's getting ripped out. It's like, that is coming out one way or another, and probably badly.
Even worse than we pictured. I wasn't expecting, it's ultimately, when it comes down to it, this is still a kid's movie. And you just watched a guy get picked up overhead and ripped in half. I wasn't expecting that.
For real. That whole scene, that following moment where at the same time D16 becomes Megatron and Orion receives the Matrix and becomes Optimus Prime, they drop all the vocals. It's just scored. Mm-hmm. And again, the score is beautiful. Brian Tyler, he works stuff from Transformers Prime in there. He works motifs from the franchise into this score. So the score is beautiful. I can't believe we skipped over it because it's such a big part of the movie. But the score, amazing. But they drop all the audio, all the sound effects. It's just score. And it's them slowly becoming, at the same time, these opposing forces. And I had chills the whole time. It was just so well done. From Sentinel's death to him letting Orion fall to Megatron going on, or D16, going on his rampage, to then claiming the moniker of Megatron, Orion receiving the Matrix and becoming Optimus. All of it just so well done. Everyone involved got the assignment, and it was full of care and compassion and passion, frankly, for the franchise. And I have that as a note. Like that whole scene of them both becoming who they are. Huge. Huge moment for me. And I mean chills the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So, love that. We've already talked about Arachnid. I thought she was great. I want to see more of her. Big fan. I have her as her own bullet point because surprised by her. And then the last thing I have is this film took the best parts of many different eras and elements of this franchise, and it merged them all together in a really great way. It wasn't perfect. I don't think any product, film, or whatever would be perfect. It is insanely well done. It is passionate. It is understanding of the franchise and what's important and what makes it so popular. And they do it with love at every turn for different bits. I mean, there's tons of references. There's tons of nods. Like, they just are referencing every bit of the last 40 years, but also making something new and fresh and telling this story how it needs to be told. Again, could have been longer, but that would have been my complaint regardless, because there's so much material. So much happens in this early part of Cybertron, and you just can't. You just can't do it all in a movie. You just can't. So that's, for me, that's a good place to be done running my big old mouth, because I love this movie. I would love to go see it again, and I definitely am going to own it, which is a big deal because I did not buy Rise of the Beasts.
I get basically this whole stream is kind of a really long-winded way of saying to the viewers here that well, originally I was joking we were going to title this video "We watched Transformers 1 so you don't have to," but that just would have been ironic because actually we're really saying is you need to watch it.
I mean, you could probably get everything you needed from this, but I don't think you'd want to. I think you should go see it. It's great.
And if you have seen it, go see it again, so they're encouraged to make another one.
Yeah, it's important to vote with, and I know that it's hypocritical for me to say this because I decided not to because ticket prices are insane, but like it is important to vote with your wallet. Whether you buy the Transformers 1 toys or the merch or you go see it again, if this is something that you want to see more of, we have to show Hasbro this is what we want. Oh, yeah. And I do believe I will go see it again before it's out of theaters. I will be owning a copy of the movie, and I now am convinced to buy a lot more of the toys. So I think I'm going to do my part and buy a bunch of stuff. But, I mean, if you haven't seen it, I'm so sorry, because I feel like we spoiled some key moments for you. But I also don't think it sucks all the wind out of it. I think that you'll still be impacted.
I don't think anyone in the stream here hasn't seen it.
Probably, yeah. I mean...
I mean, when I did put spoiler review in the title.
Yeah, so...
But also at the same time, there's been comments bringing up points from the movies, too. Bringing up from the movie, so it's like... They're well aware. You don't need to apologize for spoilers.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm a big fan. All that and more is why I really love this film. So, but that's my list, man.
And a full list it was.
It was. You can always count on me to talk for a while.
Well, there's a lot to talk about with this movie. And I'm glad you're here to do it, because I keep things brief. Like, my explanations, I've made it a life goal, really, to say as little words as possible when trying to explain something.
Why use lot word when little word do trick?
Well, if you use a lot of words, it means I'm going to end up repeating myself.
And you can't stand that.
No, that is an absolute pet peeve.
Yep. So yeah, that is it. I'm going to try to pull up the video now so I can see what people are saying, because I'm curious.
Let's see.
I agree.
We had one that had from CT-1509. I was so sad and mad when Alpha Trion died.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I am disappointed that he died for sure. But he did Lawrence Fishburne did such a good job as Tryon. I don't know. We didn't even touch on some of the characters and some of the references, but there's just so much in this film. Like I didn't even see everything. So
we've also got I like Bumblebee because he was talking a lot. That you talking in deep voice saying I'm badass Tron.
Keegan-Michael Key is a very funny actor. Did you catch the Key and Peele reference?
Yeah, the AA Tron.
AA Tron? Yeah.
And they mentioned it a couple times. They're like, oh no, AA Tron! They're like, every time he says that, all I'm hearing is, AA Ron Balake!
AA Ron! Yeah. Oh, man. So, yeah, that's,
It tells me they definitely wrote that part of the movie after they cast him, and they're like,
yeah,
we got you.
Like we have to work this in.
I'd like to see like the behind the scenes recording of it. Like when he first reads that and he goes A8, just like stops, just gives the look of like really.
Oh, me too. I'd love to see it. Yeah, that should be it for me. That's all my bits.
Likewise. Bobs. All our bits and bobs and doodads and thingamajigs.
Oh, man. Well,
yep.
Thanks for letting me hijack your channel to talk about a movie.
It's all good.
And thanks for going to see it with me. It's tradition.
For sure, for sure. I'm going to swap us over to the end screen. God, everyone can see this too. I have so many tabs. Outro. There we go. Catch y'all on the dude side.